Hey YouTube, this is Ian from Big Rock Moto. Today I'm going to teach you how to use the electronics and the riding modes on the KTM 790 Adventure. This video is going to focus on the R model, but most things will be applicable to the S model as well. Alright, so a lot of big deal has been made about the riding modes and all the fancy electronics on this bike. I happen to think they're very useful and a very good addition for make her safer and more enjoyable ride. While that's just my opinion, the fact is if you have one of these bikes, you're thinking about getting one, you probably want to know how this stuff works, what it actually means, and how to adjust it. And that's what we're going to do right now. Okay, so let's talk about some definitions, some terminology, and get this out of the way. So riding modes. Basically the bike has 4 riding modes, and these modes control throttle response, the traction control level, the wheelie control, and something called MSR, which is motor slip regulation. So basically the riding modes, think of them as like templates, and they change some of the built-in settings depending on the conditions you're riding in. But we're going to delve into this a lot more. So the 4 modes that you have on this bike, if you have the R model, and if you have the S model, the rally mode's optional. But what you get is street, rain, off-road, and rally. And don't worry, we're going to talk about what they do. Another thing we're talking about is throttle response. So one of the things that changes with your riding mode, or that you can configure in the rally mode individually, is the throttle response. And what this means is simply how much engine response you get based on a certain turn of the throttle. So the bike really has 4 different throttle response settings that it's going to use. It has a really aggressive setting. It has a direct setting, which is less aggressive and more normal. Then it's got a soft setting and then a very soft throttle response. So it's really got 4 different throttle settings. Of course, it's ride-by-wire, and that's why they can do this. Okay, you're going to hear MTC. MTC simply stands for KTM's version. It's motorcycle traction control. So it just controls, it just cuts the fuel and modulates your rear power to the rear wheel to keep you in touch with the ground, to keep you from spinning. So this has 9 different levels of adjustment, which you can fine-tune in the rally mode, and the ride modes have preset settings that they're going to go to that you don't necessarily see, but they're still working behind the scenes. So we'll talk about that. Okay, you're going to hear MSR. MSR is motor slip regulation. What it does is that the easiest way I can explain it is that it's kind of like the idea of a slipper clutch, although it's not a clutch. What it does is that let's say you're at a really high RPM near the red line or something high up, and you downshift really suddenly. On most bikes, that shift to that really high RPM is going to want to lock up your rear wheel because it's got too much resistance, right? Well, this bike, what it'll do is it'll add a little bit of throttle after that downshift so that the rear tire doesn't skid. So it's a nice thing, and kind of the idea that you have on some bikes with the slipper clutch. So that's MSR. The bike does have anti-wheelie control. You can't really turn this off and on individually. It's tied to what riding mode you're in. But what the anti-wheelie control does is it senses, the bike has sensors in it, and when the front wheel comes up, it cuts the throttle using the traction control system and brings the front back down for you. The wheelie mode depends on what ride mode you're in. You can't control it separately. Okay, so how does this break down? How does this work in a real world, and what do the riding modes do? So I have this chart here that I'm going to walk you through, and we're going to talk about how this actually works. So there's really 5 things going on in each of the riding modes. The throttle response, the ABS, the motorcycle traction control, MTC, MSR, the motor slip regulation, and the anti-wheelie control. So when you're in road mode, this is what you're going to be using most of the time on the street. You get the direct throttle response, which is the second most aggressive throttle response that the bike has. ABS, so ABS in all the riding modes is independently selectable from the riding mode. So the ABS setting does not change based on what riding mode you're in. And it's the only factor that doesn't change depending on the riding mode. So you have to manually set it. And we'll talk about that. So the ABS, you can select separately, again, from the riding mode, is either on, which is both channels on, off-road, which turns off the back ABS, leaves the front on, and then totally off entirely. Okay, so getting back to the road mode. So in road mode, your traction control is defaulted up to level 9, so it's going to have the most traction control intervention. MSR is going to be on, and wheelie control is going to be on in road mode. So let's talk about rain mode. So what rain mode does is it sets your throttle response to very, very soft throttle response. So you can twist the throttle a lot, and it doesn't give you a lot of power, which is really good for slippery road conditions. Let's say you're riding in snow or ice, that's probably where I would think this would be really useful as well. Again, your ABS is selectable no matter what mode you're in. But if you're riding in rain, hopefully you're going to have your ABS turned on. And I should mention that the default setting for ABS and MTC and MSR is going to be on all the time in all the modes. So in rain mode, just like road mode, your traction control set to maximum to number 9, and MSR and anti-wheelie are going to be active. Okay, so let's talk about off-road mode. When you put the bike into off-road mode, a few things happen. The throttle response is softer than the road mode. The reasoning for that, I think, is that it's a little bit easier to control in the dirt instead of you won't slide around as much. The other thing it does in off-road mode, it turns your MTC, your traction control, to number 7, which is still a pretty high level of regulation, but it allows a little bit of sliding on the rear end. In off-road mode, your MSR and your anti-wheelie control are turned off, and they're just off in that mode and you can't turn them on. So off-road mode is going to be good for, like, smooth dirt roads, gravel roads, maybe if you're fully loaded with bags and you don't want to be too aggressive, it's a good thing to have. Now keep in mind, you can turn MTC off in any mode, and keep in mind also you've got to adjust your ABS even in off-road mode. So just because you go into off-road or rally mode doesn't mean your ABS defaults to the off-road setting. It doesn't. The ABS is going to still be on both wheels, even in off-road or rally mode. So that's something you've got to remember. Okay, so rally mode. The rally mode is what makes this bike a bit unique, and it comes standard on the R and again is an option on the S. So in rally mode, you can change the throttle response. I really like this, and the reason is that so it defaults in rally mode to a really aggressive, what they call rally throttle. I don't really like it that much because you turn the throttle a little bit and you get a whole lot of throttle. So it's good for doing quick and easy power slides or really feeling like you're super aggressive, but it's not that progressive and easy to use. So I like to change the throttle response myself down to a lower setting, like road or off-road, street or off-road. But being able to configure it's really nice. In rally mode, your MSR and your anti-wheelie are off. The big deal with rally mode is that it changes the dash and it changes how your buttons work. And what I mean is that it gives you control directly of the MTC, of the traction control setting. So now your up and down buttons, when you go into the rally mode, you're going to see a number on the dash. It's going to be 1 through 9. So that's a great feature to have, and you can adjust this as you're going down the trail. So let's say you're coming up to a really steep hill climb and you're in setting number 8. Well, that's going to cut your throttle too much on that steep hill, so you're probably going to want to bump it down to like 4 or 5. You can do that instantaneously with your left-hand switch gear before you get to that hill, so that's a really useful thing. The other nice thing about the rally mode, and this is also true of the off-road mode, is that at least on my bike, which is a 2020, I don't know if the 19s were this way because I've heard some conflicting reports, but when you're in the off-road or the rally mode, and let's say you turn off your ABS, because remember, you have to do that separately from the ride mode. When you cycle the key, it remembers your settings. So you turn the bike off, you turn it back on, and your ABS is still to off-road mode, which I think is really, really, really nice. You don't have to keep resetting it every time. That can be kind of dangerous if you're in a real aggressive riding situation or coming downhill. You turn your bike off or something, turn it back on, and you forget that your ABS has reactivated itself. Well, this bike doesn't have that problem. At least when I turn the ABS to off-road mode, it remembers that setting when I turn the bike back on. So good job, KTM, on that. So quick selector 1 and 2. Quick selector 1 is your up button, and quick selector 2 is your down button. What I did and what I recommend you guys do is set one of the buttons to the ride mode and set one of the buttons to the ABS setting. The reason for doing that is that now you don't have to go into the settings. You don't have to hit the set button and go into settings to change your ride mode or to change your ABS. So here's my usual MO with this bike. When I'm approaching a dirt road or going to go on the trail, I first hit my up button, and you can do this still while riding. Hit my up button and I go into either my off-road or my rally mode. Close the throttle real quick and it'll go into the mode, it'll set it. And then once that's done, I hit my bottom arrow. And the bottom arrow, since I have it programmed to ABS, then I switch the ABS to off-road really quick, and then I'm set, I'm good to go. I don't have to stop, I don't have to go into the menu to the settings. So the fact that they gave you those quick selector settings in the menu is super valuable. Thank you, KTM, for doing that. So if you're not using those on your KTM 790, you really should. It's going to save you a lot of time. Okay, and then if we want to look through some of the menus on some of these other functions, so KTM MyRide has some navigation features, some control of audio and music. I haven't played with it yet, but I know a lot of people really like it. Trips and data allows you to pull up different information. Trip 1, these are your trip computers, so it's kind of weird that you have to go into the menu to get your trip computers, but of course you can put a lot of this trip data onto your main screen, and we'll show you how to do that. But in a trip, it gives you, your fuel consumption, your average speed, trip time, fuel range. That's really useful. Trip 2, warning just gives you, okay, right now I've got low fuel and my side stand down, so that's just whatever warning codes is throwing. This is the ride mode that I talked about, so that's where you're going to set your 4 riding modes. Quick shifter on or off. You have to have this option enabled from your dealer, which costs money. But if you do have it, you also need to go into the menu and make sure it's turned on. In settings, so favorites is the screen. If I back up here, favorites is this screen here that you've got when you're riding down the highway, right? You can change what's here, which is really nice. Like I have trip 1 activated, consumption 1, average fuel consumption. Let's see, you can turn on the different things you want. So let's say I wanted to add fuel range, I can add that. Actually, I do want to add that. I don't care what date it is when I'm riding down the highway. Odometer, battery, I guess that's good. I don't need these phone things. So now, if I go back here, now of course it's changed the layout and made it smaller because I added another data field. Going back to the settings that you've got. These are the quick selectors I'm talking about. So quick selector 1, set to the ride mode. You can also, if you want, you can have it other settings, but it's much, in my opinion, you want to set up number 1 is ride mode and number 2 is ABS, and you can thank me later. You can set your Bluetooth display theme. So this is one thing. I have it set to night mode because I don't like the white background. If I go into this, well, it's not going to the white, but I don't like the white background, which is like day mode. So let me go, oh, there it is. See, I don't like, it doesn't look good to me. So I'm going to go, I have it set to night mode all the time. So I've got display theme, night. Okay. Shift light, you can, I'm not going to go into this in this video. Actually, because my bike is still in break-in, I can't program the shift light, but it has a programmable shift light which has flashing or different colors, which is very useful. Depending on where you want to shift, you can set that. Clock date, DRL, I've got set to on. The daytime running light is just that outline on the headlight, which looks really cool. So the service, it gives you like, okay, when's your next service? So you have to, take it to the dealer to have this reset. So I hope this video was useful for you guys. Please let me know if you guys have different opinions about how to set this up or what you guys prefer to have in your settings. Let me know if you have any complaints about it or things that you wish KTM would have done differently. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Please give the video a thumbs up if you find this useful. Until next time, we'll see you out on the trail. Ride safe.